Hey everybody, and welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. If it's your first time here, welcome to my channel. My name's Abby and I'm a homeschooling mom of 2 high schoolers. And today I want to talk about writing, which is one of those classes that I know neither of my kids really enjoy all that much. And that's okay. You know, they don't need to love every single subject. They are what I would call reluctant writers, where if they had a choice, they would not choose to, write short stories or work on a novel, and they don't get particularly thrilled when I assign an essay or a research paper. And that's okay. Some students really love writing and some do not. You don't have to love every subject, but you do need to know how to be a good communicator. And I think, speech is super important, being comfortable speaking to people, but also being able to write and write well. Even, as they go through high school and into college, they're going to need to do testing essays for college entrance exams. They're going to need to do their college application essays. They might need to write essays for scholarships. And once you get to college and you're in different classes, I think there are very few majors out there where you aren't going to have to write some sort of an essay or a research paper. Professors in college are not expecting to sit there and teach you how to write an essay. They expect you to come to college prepared to do that and prepared to do it well. So I think it's important that we build strong writing skills in our kids from an early age. So our family has chosen to use IEW's writing curriculum pretty much through all of the middle school years, and we do plan to keep using that all the way through high school. Now, if you're not familiar with IEW, that stands for the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and it was developed by a man named Andrew Pudewa, who I had the opportunity to meet at one of the great homeschooling conventions. And he's very charismatic in person, and that comes across in the tutorial videos that his program offers. My kids have found him entertaining and funny, and he gets the information across to them in a way that is relatable and easy to follow. So if you're not familiar with how the IEW writing program works, they have a program called Structure and Style. And that is essentially what they're trying to teach to your students and build upon as you go through the program. Right now they have like a primary level, which is for like your kindergarten through second grade. And then they have levels A, B, and C. So level A is like your older elementary, B is your middle school, C is your high schoolers. If you are brand new to IEW and you've never done it before, I highly recommend that you take one of their structure and style classes. These are programs that you get written material for, but then there's also digital videos available online. And the kids watch a lesson, not every day, but sometimes it's a few days a week, that introduces the new material and gives them instructions and examples. And then they continue their writing assignment from there. It's a really just good way to introduce you to their methodology of how they're teaching. It teaches them certain key things that they're going to see repeated through all of their years with IEW. So there's a year one for each of those levels of structure and style. And if you feel like your student needs kind of like a review year, like maybe they're just still struggling a bit, there is a year two version that also has videos. And once they have finished that, they can graduate into what they call their theme-based programs. And that is what both of my kids are on at this point. We did the structure and style classes back in middle school when we very first started with IEW, and then we kind of graduated to the theme-based programs. Even the theme-based programs will tell you which levels they think they're appropriate for. Some very specifically say, hey, elementary, middle school, high school, and other ones will give you a range. Maybe you have a more advanced elementary student, so it could be elementary or middle school, and same thing, it could be middle school or high school. You just have to look at your individual student and decide what's going to work best for them. I also like that they have 9 main lessons that they're aiming to teach the students. And in the structure and style, it builds upon one lesson after another, and they're learning new skills and adding new things in. And as they get into the theme-based writing, some of the earlier lessons are reviewed, a bit more quickly because they should have those fairly well mastered. And then you're getting more practice with the more advanced lessons. I have a list here just so you can hear what the 9 lesson topics are. There is note making, writing from notes, retelling a narrative story, summarizing a reference, writing from pictures, summarizing multiple references, inventive writing, formal essay models, and formal critique. All really good skills for your students to learn. In addition to that, they have some things that they ask the students to include in their writing. Now, again, younger students will have fewer things that they're required to include in their writing, and then more and more things kind of get added as the students get older or as the program advances. And that doesn't mean that by the time they're done, they're adding, 25 things into a paragraph. They may switch it up and, you should include some of these things, but not some of the others. And they just kind of mix it up for them a bit. But they have, first of all, what they call dress ups, just things to make your writing sound better. That would be like ly adverbs, strong verbs, quality adjectives, who, which clauses, things like that. They do kind of like a banned word list where they take words that tend to be overused in writing and they tell you not to use those. Common ones would be like the words go and went. Instead of saying that they went somewhere, could we say they journeyed somewhere or they traveled somewhere? Just finding better words to substitute into your writing. They will have what they will call decorations. That would be like alliteration, metaphor, simile, and then they introduce different types of sentence starters. Instead of it just being subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, how do we open with a prepositional phrase? How do we do a clausal starter? How do we start with an ly adverb? How do we start with an ing starter? And what are kind of the grammar rules that go along with that? So like I said, we've been doing mostly the theme-based writings for the last couple of years. I do have a copy of the Elegant Essay that I picked up for my son. My plan is to introduce this into his writing curriculum near the end of the school year as he's finishing up his theme-based writing. We did last year the high school essay intensive with my daughter, but I didn't want to have him do the same program since, again, some of it's not so relevant anymore with the way the SAT is changing and so much of that program, focused on those tests. But this semester, my daughter's working on advanced U.S. history-based writing lessons. We chose this one because she's doing U.S. history for her social studies class. She's doing American literature for her literature class, so we're kind of keeping with the theme here. Another one that we have on hand for future use, we kind of bought it thinking that, if we finish one of the programs early, we will jump into it, but we got medieval history-based writing lessons. And then my son is doing Following Narnia Volume 2, Aslan's Country. So this is part of a two-part volume. He did Volume 1 last year during his 8th grade year, and then we just transitioned to Volume 2. Very much a fan of this because each week he actually starts off by reading a few chapters of different books in the Chronicle of Narnia series, and then the assignments kind of pull from those readings. And so this has been just kind of fun, and he's enjoyed kind of going back and reading those books that he hasn't read since he was quite a bit younger. So what I would like to do is show you what a typical lesson looks like for one of my students and how I break that up over the 5 days of the week for them to do. I'll also show you how I take a look at an assignment when I am doing edits or making suggestions for them, and we'll just kind of mark up a paper there and show you what it is that it looks like for my kids. Okay, so here I have the examples of both the teacher book and the student book for my daughter's U.S. history-based writing. Did want to show you real quickly the scope and sequence that's in the front of the teacher book. Basically what it does is it will break it down for you each week. So there's 32 weeks of lessons, and it'll tell you which structure, style, and grammar pieces are kind of the focus of that one. For example, week 1, we reviewed ly adverbs, who, which clauses, titles from clinchers. We're actually down here on Unit 11, the one that we're looking at today, which is a research report and focuses on how to avoid plagiarism. Then it tells you the subject. So we're doing the Underground Railroad this week. So again, we're doing U.S. history, so everything kind of flows along with that. There are a couple additional columns that show how you can match it up with a literature program that they talk about. We're not doing that literature program, so I don't really look at that information. I just look at this when I'm doing my planning. Okay, so you'll notice that there's a lot of similarity between the teacher book and the student book. Usually the areas that are in gray are extra bits of information for me as the teacher, either giving me resources that I could look back to or points I might want to make to the student as we're going over this. At this point, she does a lot of this independently, but I am here to kind of help guide her through it. And I do determine what it is I'm going to have her do on each day of the week. So I know that from looking at this lesson that she's going to be writing a 3-paragraph essay, and I want to give her the full 5 days of the week to get it done. Okay, so typically on day 1, I will have my daughter read the first couple of pages of her lesson, including the source material. So for this particular week, I assigned her to read pages 85 through 89. So 85 is the intro page. It talks about what it is the focus is of this lesson, how we're doing multiple sources to write a research paper, and how we're going to avoid plagiarism. And it gives you the examples of ways that you can change things up that you have found from sources to put them in your own words. Usually the second page will have some sort of an assignment outline. I don't have her follow this exactly. I do use it as a guide when I'm determining what I want to have her do each day, but there's a few things we leave out. For example, we leave out anything related to vocabulary and literature because we have a separate curriculum for those things. And then I will kind of break down and give her specific tasks that I want her to do on each day. Now for this, then she's got a couple of pages of source text. So we see we've got source text 1, the Underground Ride to Freedom, and then we have source text 2, the Underground Railroad. And that will be her whole assignment for the first day, is usually to read. Now, sometimes these assignments will include pages that have activities for her to fill out. And let me see if I can just find one. Yeah. So sometimes there is an activity page, and I will tell her to, read and fill that out as a part of that day 1 assignment. A lot of times if they're introducing a concept that hasn't been reviewed before, or one that, just could require a little extra practice, that will be what that activity page is about. And then that skill will be pulled into the writing assignment. So day 2 of this week, then I'm going to have her do what's called a keyword outline. And I tell her, model it after the one you see on page 90. So if she goes over here, she can see on page 90, we have a topic that we're going to try to find. This particular assignment said, look for the topics covered in those source texts and choose one. So she'd write a topic there, and then she'd read the first source text and she would create a keyword outline. Since she's got a topic, she's going to be looking for keywords that come from that source text that relate to that topic. Because we all know that you can read something and it could cover, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different topics. But if we're researching from multiple sources, we want to be able to pull information on just the topic that we're interested in. So maybe she's talking about famous people on the Underground Railroad. So she'd be looking in that source text for information on famous people. And she's got spots here to do 8 lines, so 8 sets of keywords, and she's only supposed to use a couple of keywords per line. I have her do this on a separate sheet of paper and turn this all in with her final draft, which is why it's not written in the book here. But she would, fill that out for source 1. Then she would go through source 2 and she would do the same thing. She would make another keyword outline. So now we have a keyword outline from source 1 and source 2, all about one topic. Also, on day 2, I would tell her to then take those keyword outlines from those 2 source texts and create one fused outline. So a fused outline looks like this, where they come up with a dramatic opener, something to grab your attention to the paragraph, and then they take those 2 keyword outlines that they've done for the first topic and they put them together into one. So how can we combine those and create a fused keyword outline? Now, this was a skill that she was introduced to in her structure and style class, years ago, and it was reviewed more in detail several weeks prior. But once she's done that, then she'll write a clincher. So that's all day 2. So day 2, she's writing 2 keyword outlines from the 2 source texts and combining them into a fused one. From that, she's going to write 1 paragraph, the first paragraph of her essay. So when they look at a keyword outline, if they have 3 words there, how do we turn those 3 words into a sentence? And so she could end up with as many as 7 sentences plus a dramatic opener and a good clincher sentence, something that kind of summarizes the idea of that paragraph or that reflects the topic sentence that we did. On day 3, so Wednesday, she would be repeating this for the second topic for her paper. So maybe this time it's famous locations in the Underground Railroad. So again, she'd go through source 1, do a keyword outline related to locations. She'd read source 2, do a keyword outline related to locations, and then fuse those together into one fused keyword outline, and then she would write paragraph 2. Then on day 4, so now we're on Thursday, she would do that for the third topic of this research paper. Same thing. Keyword outline for source 1, keyword outline for source 2, fused, keyword outline, and then write paragraph 3. An additional thing she wants to do is include a final clincher. So we did a dramatic opener on the first writing day where we were introducing the topic. So how do we want to open this whole research paper? And then when we wrap it all up, what's going to be our final clincher? What is going to summarize the main points of this whole writing assignment? So at this point, she's got her 3 paragraphs written. And I have her take a peek at the last page of the lesson, which is a checklist. So this checklist here tells her what it is she wants to include in her paper. For example, it tells her she needs to use MLA writing format, and that if she needs to review that, that's back in the appendix of this book. She needs to make sure the title reflects words from the final clincher. So what you're going to name your research paper has to pull words from the final sentence of the paper. Do you have a dramatic opener to your research paper? Are your topic sentences written with keywords highlighted? Do you have clinchers written with keywords highlighted? Final clinchers reflecting dramatic opener. So just a couple of things it asks for you to include. Now here it tells you that there are certain things you want to actually mark on the paragraph before you turn it in. I no longer have them do this. I had them do this in the early years when I felt like they were struggling to include everything. Now I can find them in their writing pretty quickly. But here it says dress ups you need to include. Each section or paragraph must include at least one of each dress up and sentence opener. So dress ups that she needs to include: ly adverbs, who which clauses, at least one has to be invisible, a strong verb, a quality adjective, a www Asia B clause. So that's like, although, since, instead of, that kind of thing. Dual ly verbs or adjectives, and then different types of sentence openers. So prepositional phrase opener, ly adverb opener, ing phrase, a www.asiab clause, or a very short sentence. She also has decorations. Now here it says choose 3 and use anywhere. So it gives her 5 options and she can choose how she wants to do them. Alliteration, simile or metaphor, personification, the 3 triple S's, or a triplicate. So as she's getting ready to turn in this rough draft, she will go in and she will mark if she's included these things. Sometimes she will look at this as she's writing those paragraphs on the individual days to make sure she's incorporating it as she goes. And I do encourage that. I find that easier if you kind of know what you need to include as you're writing versus going back and adding it in later. But you can see here, like, she's kind of just made pencil marks to show what she's included. I can see she's left a couple blank, and usually that's because she's kind of gotten stuck as to where to add it in. And that's where me kind of going in and editing, I might be able to give her some suggestions on where she might be able to incorporate that. This also tells her banned words that she shouldn't use. So she shouldn't use really or very. She needs to try to find alternative words to include there. And then, of course, when she turns it in for the final, she needs to have the final draft, the rough draft, and all of the keyword outlines stapled together, because I expect all of that to be turned in. So that takes her through the first 4 days. I take all of this on Thursdays, and then I will check her writing to the checklist, and then I will hand that back to her with my suggestions or things that I've noticed, or some ideas on things that she's missing. And then she will make those corrections, type it up, and turn it all in on Friday. So you can see how the pages look for me, the teacher. You can see here there's a couple of notes along the side here for the different things. I really like this though. In the teacher guides, they give examples of the keyword outlines. So if your student's struggling to figure out, maybe a topic or, how to write a keyword outline, you can look at this for some examples here. And then, of course, as the teacher, I have a copy of the checklist. They also have it where you can download extra checklists online for the courses that you've purchased. So if your students kind of marked their own up as they're writing, and you don't want to necessarily mark in your teacher book, I can print off a clean copy and use that for my grading. I also like that it tells me how many points to assign for different things. This kind of tells me how important those different aspects are to that lesson. So, this writing assignment is out of a total of 85 points. And when I'm grading the final version, I can just mark down how many points she's earned for each individual element and get a total and then determine the percentage. So it's very, very easy to grade. All right, so here is a rough draft assignment that was turned in for this lesson on the Underground Railroad. And I'm going to just kind of go through, and I'll just show you on one paragraph kind of what I look at here. So usually I start by reading the paragraph just once through, just to make sure that nothing jumps out at me as, hey, that's an incomplete sentence, or there's, some obvious grammar errors or a misspelling or anything like that. And if I see that, I will mark them. Once I do that, I will usually start actually with the dress ups and the sentence openers. I just find that those are easier for me to mark, and I will identify them on the paper, where I see them. So I know she has to include an ly adverb. So I will kind of just look through here, and I can see we've got an ly adverb there, and I'll just mark it with an ly. A who, which clause, I see that there. So I'm just going to keep going through and marking the dress ups that she needed to include. And then I will go through and I will do the same thing for the sentence openers. So they teach the sentence openers as like numbers. So prepositional phrase openers are always a number 2. LYs are always a number 3. And I'll just mark the number on here to show, what I have found. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in and I'm just going to mark a couple of things on here. And then I'll come back and give you an idea of, what it is that I found. So here's her paper with just my marks on the first paragraph. So of course, first I'm going to check and see if she has kind of a dramatic opener for the whole research paper. And, by dramatic, it doesn't need to be over the top, but does it grab your attention? And so I read her first sentence, and I agree that that's a dramatic opener. I then also look for the topic sentence for the paragraph and what are the key words there, and are they reflected in the clincher sentence? Because your topic sentence should, of course, tell you what the overall paragraph is about, and the clincher should sort of summarize that same idea or restate the topic sentence. So I just underlined a few words here. So, they're talking about reaching freedom, pursuing freedom. The same idea is reflected in both of those. Then I went through and I marked the different dress ups. So I just kind of shorthand them, ly adverbs, who, which clauses that she needs to have. Did she include a strong verb, a quality adjective? Does she have one of the clauses in there? I don't put the whole, www.asia.b. I just put www. So I know what that means. That's my shorthand for it. And then she had to do a dual ly verb or adjective. So basically it's just doing either 2 ly adverbs, 2 verbs, or 2 adjectives in a sentence that are reflective of the same noun. So, or noun or verb. So here she had this actually as part of her sentence starter here. So I marked those. And then I put the numbers to mark the different types of sentence starters. So I have her prepositional phrase number 2, an ly adverb starter number 3, an ing starter number 4. 5 was the clausal. And then I made a note over here that she needs to have a number 6 or a very short sentence. And those are sentences that are only 2 to 5 words. She had it checkmarked that she had included it, and maybe she thought one of her sentences was shorter than it was, but none of her sentences met that requirement. So I didn't, tell her what to write. I just put a note over here like, hey, you still need to include a number 6 opener there. And then as far as the decorations she needed to choose from, I didn't see any of those used in here. I usually tell her if you have to use 3 decorations, try to use 1 in each of the 3 paragraphs. So I saw that kind of later on she uses the triple. So I will probably come back and, advise her to try to fit that one of those in here. Similes and metaphors are a really easy way to include something. For example, here she wrote, discreetly and mysteriously slaves would disappear from plantations. She could, extend that, they would disappear from plantations like something, like a ghost in the night, or something like that. So I will put a little note over here and say, you know, decoration could you add a simile? And usually what I will do is kind of give her an idea like, hey, I feel like this sentence might be a good spot for you to introduce that. I won't tell her which simile to use. You know, she doesn't have to do that, but it just gives her an idea because, again, she's missing that from her overall checklist, and it might be something that will work into there. So really, I'm not making a whole lot of corrections to this because she didn't do any grammatical errors. The sentences all flow well. It all looks good. I'm really double checking to make sure that she's included the things that she needs to include and giving her some advice if something is missing. And then she'll just kind of go back from this and add those things in and make those changes before she turns it back into me. Something I do want to point out is it does look, when you first look at this, like there is just a ton that they need to include. But a lot of it can be kind of used for more than one thing. You know, for example, if you're doing an ly adverb sentence starter, that to me counts as your ly adverb. I mean, yes, could you use another ly adverb somewhere in the paragraph? Absolutely. If you use it more than once, that's great. But that counts. You know, if you're using a got to include a clause, why not make it your clausal starter? So, you know, I look at it like that. Now, maybe some people would say, well, I want you to, you know, do that somewhere within a sentence as opposed to the sentence opener. I will count it more than once because it just happens sometimes, and it gets hard to try to fit everything into one paragraph. But this is really what I do. And I'll repeat that for paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 and turn that back into her so she can make what corrections she needs to. All right, so that is how I teach writing in our homeschool. I really do feel like the IEW program has been really beneficial for both of my students. Like I said earlier, neither one of them is going to go off and write a novel, and that's fine, but I am confident that they will be well prepared for the next stage in life in whatever way they need to communicate, whether that's letters or emails or formal papers or essays or even research papers. They will be ready to do it. And after all, that's what our job is to do, is to get them ready for that next step in life. I also find that IEW programs are extremely affordable. You know, it's a lot of bang for your buck. The consistency and how the lessons are approached and how the techniques are added and taught is just really nice for my students. So if you have a student who is a reluctant writer or is struggling with their current writing curriculum, I do highly recommend that you check out the IEW program. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoy these how-to videos, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and subscribe down below to my channel so you can be notified when I post new mom life and homeschooling content. Thanks so much again, everybody. Have a great one.